Hi, and welcome to MSP Cyber Secure Conversations. I'm Harriet. I'm product manager at Giacom, looking after our cybersecurity portfolio. Another really cool topic, which I'm really excited to discuss today, and I'm really lucky to be joined by Nihil from usecure. Hey, Nihil, tell us a bit about yourself.
Hey Harriet. Yeah, thank you for having me today. Yeah, again, I'm Nihil. I'm the CRO at usecure. So I effectively oversee our sales team and work with our distributors and partners to essentially try and plot ahead how we can help the channel to implement more cybersecurity awareness measures in their clients. So usecure is all about essentially end user awareness training, phishing, all that sort of fun stuff to stop people from clicking on things they shouldn't be.
Which they still will.
Yes.
um, yeah, I mean, we use usecure at Giacom as well. It's so user friendly. The cartoons are great. It's exactly what we would want in a security awareness training product. So we love it. But what we're going to be talking about today is AI powered phishing attacks. And it's funny because I was actually speaking to someone yesterday about it, and about, chat GPT and everything coming into the mix. So it's a really cool topic. I think it's something that everyone will want to listen to as well. So in particular, how attackers are leveraging AI for phishing and how we can boost employee resilience, right? So this is what you guys specialize in, yeah? It's
Yeah,
phishing. Um,
exactly.
so when it comes to phishing emails, obviously, and how they've evolved, I would say, over the last few years, what are some key things that you've noticed regards personalization?
Yeah, I think evolve is the key word. So I've been at usecure for about 5 years now. Phishing's always been a big problem. People always are vulnerable to it, and there's varying degrees of sophistication. And now that there's more AI about, that sophistication is a lot easier to achieve. I think 3 or 4 years ago, there was a lot more of a movement towards targeted spear phishing. So having a look on people's LinkedIn and trying to pinpoint different bits that they could be susceptible to. What we're seeing over the last 3 to 6 months in particular with the rise of things like ChatGPT is those AI sort of piece of software and those AI processes basically make that personalization a lot easier. So there's a lot more reports of these type of attacks coming about, and the sophistication of them is quite scary. I think the days of sort of getting a sort of a grammar error ridden email are sort of long gone. It's pretty targeted and pretty scary, the type of stuff people come up with now.
Yeah, I mean, we're taught, aren't we? If someone's used the wrong currency sign, or if someone's spelt your name wrong, or if someone spelt your company name wrong, that's a red flag. But now with AI, those things have disappeared, and actually, where you could rely on the criminals being really rubbish at grammar, now we can't lean on that. But then
Yeah.
it goes further than that, doesn't it? Because you've now got all the deep fake voice and video scams, and that's like I mean, someone's opened a lid somewhere and it's all come flying out. What are you guys doing to tackle that?
So it's all about education. Um, Quite often in this space, naturally, you have to be relatively reactive to what attackers are doing. It's very hard to preempt the next sort of frontier of phishing and that sort of sophistication. So it's about keeping your eye on what's going on, keeping an eye on trends, and then as quickly as possible, building actually engaging content for people to understand what those threats are, because they change so quickly. And like you say, the sort of sophistication is now on another level. I think supposedly part of the reason why they used to send out those really awful phishing emails is to basically just sort of spam loads of people and see who's more vulnerable, and then choose those people to then properly target. Now they don't have
Okay.
to go through that process because they can just get a properly targeted email. It doesn't take them ages to start to draft it, and then they can get it straight into people. So it's almost like that initial vetting process is gone. And even things like what we're doing today, obviously, it hopefully will really help to educate people and give them a bit of insight into what's going on. But it's almost ammunition for attackers. There's a lot of
Yeah.
like video and voice data we're giving them right now, which
Stop.
could, yeah, exactly. Just going back to writing everything on paper, it's the safest way of operating. No, it's that's kind of the continual balance. You know, everybody wants to be more visible online. Everyone wants to put a personality to their business, and then that almost gets used as a vulnerability for you. It's a very hard balance to sort of tread.
Yeah, that is really hard because you're right. When you see on LinkedIn, if you work in sales, you're encouraged to send video messages now instead of a direct message. But there was something you said in there which I think is key, and I think is where you guys really excel, is the engaging content. You can try and tell people till you're blue in the face not to click on certain emails, but in reality, if they're not engaged and they're not, bought into what they're learning, it doesn't matter. And that's where you guys, I think, do really well, is the engaging content. Um,
Yeah,
do you
I
have
think
your
we've
own
all.
team in-house doing that?
Yes, yeah. So again, because of how quickly these threats evolve, we really need a dedicated team for this. So we have our own in-house content team, our own in-house animator. And that means, again, part of the reason why we've built specific courses for AI-based phishing, things like deepfake attacks, is because we've got a very engaged client base. They tend to feed back to us about the type of attacks that they experience. We then have our own in-house content team. We can research it, we can get examples from them, and then we can build an engaging training course on it. I think we've all been in situations where you're sat in front of a slide deck for an hour and then expected just to pick up on that, and nobody really learns from it. So it's important that we keep it nice and snappy and give people things that they can actually relate to as well.
Yeah, and the reaction needs to be like that, doesn't it? Because as
Yeah,
soon as you've like gone and made some videos for a new threat that you've noticed, as soon as that content's ready to go, something else will be there, right? Um,
exactly.
so I
Yeah,
think that
exactly.
that feeds quite nicely into how the importance, I guess, of keeping that security awareness training just continuously moving with your employees. And I think you guys do some sort of scoring, is that right?
Yeah, effectively. So obviously, phishing is obviously a major threat, but there's also multiple different vulnerabilities that people have and different levels of awareness of different topics like secure passwords and all that type of stuff. So we do use like baseline scoring to then build more personalized training programs for people. That way, as well as being able to, prioritize things like phishing and deepfake attacks, we can also then figure out if your CFO happens to be very bad at social media security. We can pinpoint their training and make sure they're getting the education as efficiently as possible. And I think that's part of it as well, is that you have to sort of give people engaging training that's actually relevant to them and help them understand themselves why they're learning about it and how that's going to help them. Like going back to things like phishing, like my mum still regularly texts me to say, I've got this email from Lloyd's. Is it real? And I'm like, Mum, you don't bank with Lloyd's. But I think it's because she hasn't,
Oh.
because I know it's very sweet. I feel bad for digging her out there, but I think it's because she hasn't had that education to sort of spot those things herself. It's just a case of she's just getting the yes or no. You don't
Mm.
then change behaviors, you're just being reactive to it. And I think that's why the training is really important. It's preempting these type of things. It's helping people to understand what the best practices are and then continually reinforcing it. So then they then realize that they almost don't have to think about it. They're just checking the domain of sender addresses and they're operating those sort of best practices as they should be.
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny you mentioned your mum, because I think from like our generation, right? I'm guessing we're a very similar age. We think we're not susceptible to scams, right? Because we're IT savvy. We grew up on MSN Messenger. We know what we're doing. But in reality, the scammers and the criminals are probably the same age as us and know exactly what to look for. So when
Exactly.
you say about how the phishing attacks are becoming more personalized and you can really target someone and find their vulnerability, that's exactly what you're doing with your training. So you're taking that personalization and you're tailoring it in completely the other way. But I think that's really important as well, because you're right, someone might be really good at looking out for certain things in emails, but actually they've got an Achilles heel somewhere else, and
Mhm.
you can identify that and then knock it on the head, hopefully.
Exactly. Or even like taking the type of attacks that people are experiencing and then, in an ideal world, hopefully they've spotted that and they've reported it, but that one person might be very vigilant. There might be 20, 30 other people in that company who wouldn't have had the same response. They just got lucky that it went through to this one person. So, taking those type of real life attacks and simulating them in a safe environment is such an effective way to figure out who needs extra help. And it's not a case of naming and shaming those people. It's more just saying you haven't quite had the help you've needed beforehand. Now we know that. We're going to train you up, and from there on out, it's your responsibility to be more on top of things. I think people quite often, I think a lot of people are sort of susceptible to this can sometimes think we have an IT team or we have an outsourced IT partner who handles a lot of this stuff. And I know I've got an antivirus solution on my system. I know there's a lot of different things that are in my network, so I don't really have to worry. Things that come through to me are absolutely fine, and
Yeah.
they're often not. So it's just about giving people that understanding that there is still a threat out there, and there is still a responsibility on them to be vigilant and just follow these simple steps. Just check the domain of the sender address that you get. If you get a link for a URL, you can literally just copy that link and paste it in a Word document so you can see where it's taking you. Just pick up the phone and speak to that person. I know we're talking about deepfakes, and that does make it a bit of a problem.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there are, if you have their mobile number, give them a call. Do things like a video call there, especially when you're making things like payments. It's better to be
Yeah.
safe and seen to be a little bit of a stickler and slow down a process than accidentally give away thousands of pounds.
And it is really easily done. And I mean, I shouldn't admit this, but it wasn't that long ago that I clicked on something that I shouldn't have clicked on. And luckily, it was
Mm.
something that was sent as a test to me. And I thought, I am the worst person who looks after cybersecurity to click on this. But it happens because you think you know everything, and in reality, you don't. And so there's no shame in having to educate yourself. We don't all know it all, and with the emerging trends and everything that's going to come in the next few years, you can't know it without learning it. So
Mm. Was
yeah,
that was that a usecure fish by any chance?
I
It's
can't possibly comment. got a message
yeah,
after then. You've been
yeah.
subscribed to a new course. But I mean, obviously on that theme, there is going to be trends and there is going to be new emerging things that come over the next few years. What have you guys got your eye on in terms of technology around the corner?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we're seeing come up more and more often is attackers using more context. So I sort of alluded to it a little bit earlier about using social media, and that was always a bit of a context thing. We find it if we have a new starter, that person is going to get fake emails from our CEO. They're new, everything's a bit fresh. They're going to click on stuff a bit more readily. What we're seeing happen more now is people taking that step further, and quite often, if they infiltrate a system, an attacker will just sit there. They won't actually do anything immediately obvious, but they will analyze in real time how you act with your colleagues, the type of emails that you send, the tone of the emails that you send to your colleagues, who you tend to email the most and what about. And then they use that information to then craft messages that actually align with the type of things that are going to get your colleagues to click on it. So it's almost like whereas previously getting the password was the sort of the holy grail, they're now going a bit further and saying, well, now we have that, we can actually dig a lot deeper and get and then sort of from the inside start to then penetrate to other people. And then all of a sudden you have multiple breaches rather than just one. So that's quite an
Wow,
interesting and scary
scary.
prospect.
Yeah. I mean, who's got the time to do that?
It's basically a full-time
Wow.
job, isn't it? And
Yeah,
but
it
it
is.
pays so well with things like ransomware. So
Yeah, of course. Wow. Yeah, I mean, it's hard because then you think, well, how can you trust anyone you ever speak to? Next time I get a Teams message, I'm gonna have to call them and say, was this you?
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. So
um,
it all goes back to the education piece. It all goes
yeah.
back to helping to, help people to understand exactly how to check these type of messages, making sure that you have visibility on things like dark web breaches. Quite a common route of attack is if you're involved in the Canva breach a few years ago, for example, the thousands of others that happen, and your email address and your password is leaked, and you use that same email address and password for everything else. There's multiple routes that people can go down. So it's about having the visibility on what's out there, and then make sure you're educating your staff members and using measures like forcing password resets to make sure that that type of information is outdated. Things like MFA as well. A lot of people still don't actually activate MFA. It's a very simple fix. So you can combine things like monitoring the environment, infrastructure things like 2FA, but also actually educating people. And then all of a sudden you've got a multi-layered approach to try and resist these type of attacks.
Yeah, yeah, it is staying vigilant, isn't it? And we, as part of this series of conversations we've done, one of them was on cyber insurance, and we talked about the importance of security awareness training in order for you to lower your cyber insurance premiums and things. And I think this is one of those one of those solutions or products that actually should overlay every security product that people have. Just because there's, you can have all the protection in the world, but all it takes is one of your employees to, all it takes is a Harriet to go, yes, I'll have that gift card.
Yeah.
Um,
Don't be a Harriet. That should be the
don't
tagline.
be a Harriet. Yeah. Okay, that's a new marketing campaign for you. um, but that's all really fascinating. I think that probably wraps up everything I wanted to cover. But is there anything else that while you're here, is there anything else you wanted to chat about?
No, I think we've covered the main bits. I think one thing that is always continually surprising is that the the stats about the percentage of attacks that come from phishing and the stats about the percentage of companies that get phished every year stays pretty consistent. So it just sort of goes to show that even as the threats get more evolved, the training needs to continue evolving and evolve even further. If you stand still and keep doing the same things you were doing 2, 3 years ago, if the threats are so different, you're going to see that percentage increase. So it doesn't have to be that scary. It doesn't have to be a mammoth task to help educate your staff members. It's just about having a consistent process in place with that continual training, and then also layering it, as you mentioned, with different sort of bits for your infrastructure that then mean your staff members are helped out, but also they know exactly what they should do to be another layer of defense as well.
Yeah, nail on the head, I think. Yeah, it is like a drip feed approach, isn't it? I mean, if you said to someone you need to educate all of your employees, and at the moment you've got nothing in place, you might then, your heart just might sink a bit and think, oh God, what a task. But actually, 2 or 3 years' time, you're going to be really grateful you did. And if you think 3 years ago now, what, we were probably in a lockdown, and that's just gone by like that. So yeah, good advice. Well, thank you. Really nice to have you here anyway. Really nice to see
Yeah,
you.
thank you
So
for it.
thanks for taking us through that. We'll make sure that our partners and people watching the video know how to get in touch with you, should they have any questions. But yeah, thanks for coming to
Yeah,
MSP Cyber Secure Conversations.
great tagline. Thank
Nailed
you,
it.
Harriet.
All right. Thanks, Nihil.
Lovely. All right, bye-bye.